You've got a great idea for a small business, but you just can't get it off the ground. You want to be your own boss, set your own hours. Well, new year means new opportunities, and Shopify's got you covered to help get your venture off the ground. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. You can get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. And they help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard. Don't kick yourself next holiday season when your 2025 resolution list looks the same as it does today. Make it happen with Shopify. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/income.
Moms, tired of overthinking every decision around what's best for your kids? Stop. Get Smarty Pants vitamins and worry about one less thing. Smarty Pants Kids Multi and Omegas support kids' overall health with 16 daily nutrients, including vitamin C for immune support and D3 for bone health. That's 45% more nutrients than the leading kids' multi-gummy brand. Seems like a no-brainer, right? Get Smarty Pants on Amazon today.
Slow Burn Media, Evergreen Podcasts, and Killer Podcast presents Who Killed?, a podcast that provides a voice for the voiceless.
Police are looking for this boy, 12-year-old Johnny Gosch. He's the son of Mr. and Mrs. John Gosch of 1004 45th Street in West Des Moines. The boy was last seen this morning about 6 o'clock as he began his paper route in front of Valley United Methodist Church at 42nd and Ashworth.
That was September 5th, 1982. 40 years later, Johnny Gosch is still missing. The case remains unsolved.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Who Killed? I'm your host, Bill Huffman, and this is a Slow Burn Media, Evergreen Podcasts, and Killer Podcast production. On this week's episode, I am very lucky to be joined by the one and only Kelli Brink, host of True Crime IRL. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bill. It's nice to be here.
Well, I'm very lucky to have you on. I know that you had just done
I'm the lucky one. Come on.
Oh, thanks. But I'm pretty sure you just did a live show in Cleveland a week ago or so with somebody else I know. And
I did.
People who listen to this show know, and that would be the Captain.
Yep, the Captain. That was our third live show we've done. We've kind of done like a little United States tour, like a mini tour over the last few months. We've been doing a show every month or two. But this was at Brewdog Cleveland, which was awesome. We had a great time, a great turnout, and we closed the bar down, most importantly.
Well, when you're hanging out with the Captain, I would expect nothing less.
Yeah,
and
he's a little bit of a mess, isn't he?
I guess, you see him at CrimeCon, and, you see those pictures on the Instagram.
Yes, on the gram.
Captain is the Captain, and
Yep.
captains do what captains do, and being a sailor, I know what that means, so it's all good. It's all good.
Drink, pillage,
little
all
bit,
of that.
all of that stuff. All great.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
exactly what we did.
That's exactly how the show went down, yes.
I can totally imagine. Well, Cleveland is my hometown, but where I currently live.
Yep.
I'm currently in Denver, and you are currently in
Iowa. My family lives in Denver, but I'm in Iowa. Born and raised in Iowa.
Well,
Iowa girl.
Awesome. It may not be heaven, but it is Iowa.
Yeah. It is. It's pretty heavenly. It's green and lush and beautiful. So
it is. I've driven across it many times.
Yeah, it's a flyover state.
And speaking of driving across it, I have driven through the city that we are talking about, or the case that we are talking about today, and that would be Des Moines. And the case that we are talking about is the infamous kidnapping, abduction of 12-year-old Johnny Gosch, the paperboy abduction.
Yep.
And what's your connection then to that? Because you're from, how far away from you was that case?
Yeah. So actually, in 1982, when this happened, my family was living in Des Moines also. So I grew up kind of hearing, things about this from my mom and just neighbors and stuff. Everybody was talking about it. Everyone still talks about it. Like I said, I'm born and raised in Iowa. So yeah, the name Johnny Gosch has been, in our heads since we were kids. It was just such a crazy thing to happen. I live about 2 hours from Des Moines now. I live in a really small town in Iowa.
Okay.
But I did, I lived in Des Moines when I was little. So.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because that's sort of like he was one of the first, stranger danger abduction cases. And I guess we should let's kind of discuss what actually happened on that day. Mm-hmm. And that was, it was a September day. I think it was like September 5th, 1982.
Yeah, it was.
And Johnny was supposed to be delivering his papers. He was a paper boy. And
yeah, he was.
This was the Sunday. Was this the Sunday edition?
Yeah, this was the Sunday edition.
Okay.
He was a paper boy. He was a really responsible kid. So he begged his parents for a paper route, actually. And they were very apprehensive, even though, it was a really safe area and stuff that they lived in. They just weren't sure about their young son going out so early in the dark hours every morning and every weekend. So usually Johnny's dad would go with him on the paper route. But this is kind of crazy. This was the first time that Johnny's dad didn't go with him. So it's tragic, that was the first time he decided not to go along with him. And then what happened.
Now,
so.
do you know, just real quick, was that a conscious effort on did his dad purposefully not go, or did Johnny not wake him up? Or because you would think if his dad was on the regular going with him,
yeah,
be getting up at the same time.
That's true. I'm not exactly sure how that went down, if it was conscious or not, but it could have been that he kind of slipped out that morning and just didn't tell his dad. He usually went with them though, but this was the first time he wasn't along with them.
And so, being a paper boy back in the 80s, this isn't like nowadays where papers are about 4 pages and weigh about 6 ounces.
Yeah.
These things were, this was a big thing. So he actually had a wagon.
Yeah.
And, that he would put all his papers in.
Yeah.
Because literally the Sunday paper probably weighed 5 pounds.
Oh God. Yeah. It had like all the coupons and all of that stuff in it. And, he had his wagon. He also, I forgot to mention, he would take his little dog Gretchen with him along on his paper route. And I know. And he took Gretchen that morning.
And that was a dachshund, right?
Yep, little dachshund.
But on that morning, the paper boys, they all meet up and they pick up their papers at the street corner.
Yep. They had a drop-off point. All the paper boys would meet. They'd fill up their wagons or whatever they were using, and they would all meet up. And they did, as normal, that morning. He got to the drop-off point. He interacted with the other carriers, and he loaded up his wagon. He was, ready to go. And there are witnesses, that he worked with, I guess, as a paper carrier who, I don't know, do you want to get into, fellow paper people. Girls
there were people paper boy, paper girls, whatever.
Yes.
They saw him doing what everybody else was doing, and that was collecting the papers.
Yes, they did.
But they also saw something else at that time, too.
So
right?
they saw somebody, they saw like a man in a blue car talking to some of the other people. They were asking, the person in the car was asking for directions, they thought. But there was just like, they had something in their gut telling them kind of like not to speak to this man. So some people said they felt like something was just off, but they saw a blue car. And then later when Johnny started off on his route, they noticed an adult male kind of following across the street, kind of like close by him, it looked like. So, yeah.
And that was really the last known sighting of him.
Yeah, that was the last time they would ever see him. Neighbors reported hearing a car door slam, and the that there was a silver Ford Fairmont that they saw too. So I think it was like there was a blue car and a silver car. It had Nebraska plates, and it was, that's right about where Johnny's wagon would be found later in that area.
So the interesting thing is the neighbors who didn't receive their papers, they started calling the Gosch family. And so I think that's when the red flags or the alarm kind of went off.
Yeah.
And his dad went out looking for him.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Johnny was a responsible kid. He usually delivered the papers on time. He never really missed. So it was weird when people didn't get their newspapers on time. And they started calling, saying they didn't get them. And that's how John and Noreen were awakened. They thought, oh, maybe he got busy talking to his friends, or maybe he just missed a few places. They kind of at first thought the alarm bells didn't really go off at first, but very quickly they would find his wagon unattended. They would find little Gretchen the dog unattended, but there was no Johnny. So
actually I did read that the dog had returned home without Johnny, and that, I mean, could you imagine and just what that phone call must have been like and what those parents must have gone through? I mean, at first they didn't seem to freak out because his dad went and delivered the papers that Johnny was supposed to deliver, and then called the police. Like, this is so there's a weird time thing.
I mean, at this time, he was one of the first kids in Iowa really to be like kidnapped, and that it was really talked about a lot. It seemed safe. So I think at first they were just thinking, oh gosh darn it, kids will be kids. What is he doing? What did he get messed up with? What did he do? Like, did he just blow it off and go hang out with his friends? Like, who knows? But they weren't suspecting foul play right at first. So, because that just didn't happen, really. Yeah, you're right. And it was not a common thing for, kids to be abducted, let alone by a stranger. I know that, at the time, it's like you think about what happened after the fact, and, I'm kind of jumping forward a little bit, but like, you get McGruff the dog, and, it's stranger danger, and, it's 50,000 kids a year go missing, and it's just no, not really. Most of those, that's a wrong stat, but like, okay, scare your parents, that's fine. But, it was weird because, Noreen goes to the police and says, this isn't our son's responsible. He's he does not do this. Right. And what did the police say? So this part makes me so mad. And I, as a true crime fan, you guys who are listening, you've heard this a million times. He was 12 years old, but the police said that they wouldn't declare Johnny as a missing person until 72 hours had passed. So, the investigators at first insisted on classifying Johnny Gosch, little 12-year-old Johnny Gosch, as a runaway. And I mean, he was a happy kid. He adored his family. He was just out delivering his newspapers. He had never, like I said before, even done the paper route by himself until that day. So he would just never run away. And Mom and Dad tried to explain this to the police. They wouldn't listen. And even there were 5 witnesses too, something to bring up, that said they saw Johnny talking to a strange man in a car, and the car sped away and all of that. But still, police did not take the report of John and Noreen seriously. They were like, nope, he ran away. So, and as we know, the first 72 hours, how important are those in a missing persons case? I mean,
technically it's 48, and then we give him another 24 on top of it. It's like, geez,
right?
Like, let's just really, really screw our chances of making a change in bringing this child home, because you think about how quickly that would change. If nowadays Amber Alert, boom, it's, it's on your phone, it's on your TV, it's on your, like, this
and
wouldn't
actually
have happened.
No, this would not happen now, thank goodness. But the Johnny Gosch, I mean,
he'd get caught let's just put it this way.
Yeah.
There would be so much digital evidence as far as the car, ring doorbells.
Yes. But like the police would never wait 72 hours for a 12-year-old now, thank God. But and the Johnny Gosch case.
5 minutes.
No, God, no. But this case actually helped to change these laws because it was so absurd, that they waited so long. And what could have happened if things would have, happened differently? So yeah, it was a huge influence on changing these kind of like practices.
Noreen became like a huge advocate, which is, that's the biggest thing you can do when you have a missing child. But, not just for her child, but she actually helped author the bill. I think that when in 1984 that did change all these things. Basically
and
made it like, don't be stupid.
I know. Yeah, it was in 1984.
Let's use common sense.
Right. I know.
It took 2 years after that to get that through.
Yep. Yeah, and she joined forces with, and before the show we were kind of talking about John Walsh and the Adam Walsh case a little bit. Absolutely. That was another one at that time. Yeah. So she joined forces with John Walsh, and together they helped form the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which, as true crime fans, we all hear about that organization now. But she was a big part in changing how things went in these missing children cases.
That's really amazing, because I was actually, when we were talking about that, I did not even put two and two together. And so I was just talking about how, when John, everybody who's listened to the show knows John Walsh's theory on if your child goes missing, you have to be their number one advocate, and you have to be front and center and be out there in front of the media and saying, no, we need to solve this now. And, I didn't realize that she was actually working hand in hand with him. And
I know.
Clearly that she has followed that game plan for her life.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to point out also, this is not, I think this is related, but also, so 1984, 1982 was when Johnny went missing. 2 years later, Eugene Martin went missing too in Des Moines. He was an Iowa paper boy. There were so many similarities in the two cases. So she was also motivated by that, happening just 2 years later. So she really wanted to get involved because someone was stealing Iowa's kids.
Yeah. We've heard the stories about like the people following other paper boys and it became a thing, and especially in the Des Moines area, to have something so similar happen within not that long of a time frame is really disconcerting. And I think what's the most interesting about the day that he went missing is that they actually did get somebody was able to come up with a composite sketch.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know that.
Well, it's kind of vague, but it's on, if you go on Iowa Cold Cases,
Oh my gosh, there. Such a good website. I don't know if you've used that before. It's such an amazing resource. I'm friends with actually Jody Ewing, the woman who started Iowa Cold Cases website. If anybody's done any cases of that happened in Iowa, I guarantee you've researched with some of the info Jody's done. She's an amazing person. They actually have the picture of the composite sketch that they came up with, and it says 5'9", 175, 175 pounds, dark eyes, black hair, or black eyebrows, older, mid 40s. He did have black hair though, combed back, and it's. I wonder if this is a mullet. It's describing a mullet. It says full and back. Oh yeah. Business in front, party in the back.
It sounds like somebody that would be a pedophile.
A combed back mullet. That does sound very creepy.
Heavy beard or unshaven appearance. They put Latin appearance, which... Okay. And then it says this man may be driving a two-tone blue car, real dark top, and a light blue bottom, mid-size 79 to 81 model. Clean inside and outside. No vinyl top. Plush interior. Iowa plate. Now that one had an Iowa plate.
Okay, because the other one had a
Had
Nebraska
right.
plate. And we're going to talk about Nebraska. I mean, we'll go down maybe a few rabbit holes with this case.
Well, like, that's the
hopefully.
thing. It's like, you remember talking about, we just talked about how there were witnesses that saw this creepy guy.
Yeah.
And if you pull up Iowa cold case and look at it, this dude looks like a creepy guy. You wouldn't, if you were a kid, you would have kid intuition to know, stay away.
That's the thing that scares me, though, because so many of the people who, kidnap kids and adults don't look creepy. So we always think of the kidnappers as, oh, they're going to look creepy. He's going to look like a pedophile, whatever. But a lot, like Ted Bundy didn't look creepy.
Well,
a lot of people
you just
don't.
picked the one abnormal, or like
who didn't look creepy.
I mean, the dude was considered good looking. He had women,
that's
coming
true.
in. He got married during his trial. Let's come out.
Israel Keys didn't look creepy. I don't think. And he's the one who scares me more.
Scott
than anyone.
Peterson didn't look creepy either.
He didn't look creepy. No.
But Dahmer did.
No. He did. He definitely did. He was creepy, and he knew it, I think.
Oh, that's okay. And I not to go on a tangent.
We talked about this,
but we do
bit.
this. Yeah, he's just one of those guys that I think that he knew he was so nuts that, like, I mean, you see how quickly his killing accelerated, and just that's why I feel like if he would have done anything else, he probably would have. I guess there's a reason if he did do something, he wouldn't say it because it was a child, potentially.
Yeah.
But he also felt like he did confess to.
I know why. Okay. What we're talking about is, we were talking about John Walsh earlier, and Adam Walsh, his son, was murdered in Florida around this time. But what's crazy is that Jeffrey Dahmer lived right around the mall where Adam Walsh was abducted from. And so a lot of people think, I mean, there's a theory that Jeffrey Dahmer may have killed Adam Walsh instead of Otis Toole. He's the one who everyone kind of like pinned it on. But I don't know. I kind of like Jeffrey Dahmer for this. So
I don't know. I mean, again,
I know you don't think so, but
well, no, it's just more of like, John has sort of has accepted that it's, Toole, and so I guess, and he's discounted any of the Dahmer stuff. So
I know.
I guess that's the only reason that I say that, and I also like to play devil's advocate because it makes it more interesting to have that conversation. Because if we just said, "Hey, Jeffrey Dahmer killed Adam Walsh," then it's kind of like, well, he never killed anybody younger than 17 or 15.
I don't know. I had a fascinating guest on my podcast. His name's Willis Morgan, and he actually wrote a book on this exact subject, pinning Adam Walsh's murder on Dahmer. He had a lot of very interesting research he had done, just a lot of stuff. And he actually had an interesting theory as to why Dahmer would not have admitted to this murder. It has to do with. It is? I wish I could remember. I
just have a feeling. No, I think it was that it was because he didn't want to be a child killer. Considered.
I think that had something to do with it. It may have something to do with being extradited, and like that there was a death penalty. Yep, death penalty there, but not in the state. So
what's the title?
There were
of that
some.
Book?
Let's put it. I'll email it to you, and you can put it in your show notes or something.
It'll be in the show notes, and there'll be a link.
Very interesting. It's very interesting. He proposed some theories and stuff that I had never ever thought of. So he was a really good guest, and he was on my podcast. So you can go back and search too.
Sure,
I don't remember what episode. Wow, I came so prepared, didn't I?
That's okay.
I
think 2 or 3 episodes ago, I was guessing which episode number I was on, and Bill Thomas was just laughing at me, and I'm like, I don't know, man. It just they all run together.
It's the way it goes sometimes. I know I did the episode though, and I know it was interesting, so you can find it if you look hard enough.
Amazing sales pitch right there. I know it was interesting.
I know it was a good one, so just search for it.
But anyway.
But yeah, we got off on a tangent there.
Yeah,
but
it happens.
So,
well, I mean,
but
you open up
that's the thing. Yes, so many rabbit holes in this case. I think I say that about a lot of cases, but this one is like, oh my God, there's so much. So much.
So, I mean, let's talk about, so the day that he goes missing, there are witnesses. They see this particular individual. Do any of those witnesses ever, do you know if they were ever shown like, I don't know, like a lineup or, I mean, did they ever have any suspects ever? Or were these just all tips?
I just think they were tips, but don't quote me on that. I don't really know about if there was like a lineup that they looked at or anything like that. I just know that it just seemed like, I don't know, the Des Moines PD, I don't know, there were a lot of critics, so I feel like they didn't do as much as they should have in the months and years after the case. There really weren't a ton of leads either, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess, and I guess that sort of puts you between a rock and a hard place in that sense, because what do you do with a case where you don't have anything to work on? I mean, it's sort of like the, I always talk about Amy Mahalovic because that's the case that I started with, and it's the case that's closest to me, and so you look at what they had to go on was, okay, she got a phone call.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all they have to go on.
Yeah.
I mean, and then they got like a picture of this guy that they make a composite sketch of that looks like John Denver, as Chief Spetzel literally said. Just throw that out the window. It looks like John Denver. Everybody thinks.
Oh.
I mean, you could open up any yearbook from 1989, and that haircut and that guy is in that picture.
Everyone looked like John Denver, right?
Well, yeah. Speaking of Denver.
Yeah. So, but yeah, what do you do? What Noreen did is she kept hounding everybody. She just did not give up. She was relentless. And, the Des Moines PD was like, in a nutshell, they kind of hated Noreen Gosch. They wanted her to stop. They wanted her to just kind of back off and give up and let them handle it. But she didn't think that they were handling it. So she kept at it. And I wanted to quote Chief Cooney, who was one of the lead investigators in the Johnny Gosch case, worked for the Des Moines Police Department. He said in the newspaper, in the Des Moines Register, "I don't give a damn about what Noreen Gosch has to say. I'm sick of her." I mean, I don't think you'd ever hear that statement from police today. But that's kind of like representative of the relationship between the Gosch family and the police who were trying to investigate. They just didn't.
I don't know. You might hear that from some police in Texas. Maybe from
really?
maybe in a town called Uvalde. They've been really upfront with how good they are at their job. I
have not. I mean, I've seen the footage, everything. I was, God, the day that shooting happened. Oh, that was just.
No, I mean, this is just an example.
Heartbreaking, devastating.
It's terrible, but it's an example of, hey, if you just did your job, you maybe could have saved a couple of those kids, and you probably wouldn't look like such idiots, because you do.
It's the footage that they didn't want to release. They were hesitant to release. I mean, I can see why. It's disgusting. It's
everybody should be fired.
I hope they are. I hope they are.
I'm sorry, but that is a complete, absolute dereliction of duty, which we're not going to go into the dereliction of duty and how many people have done that. But it's a thing. And so,
Total
what? I don't know.
cowardice.
I wouldn't put it past cops these days. There are good ones and there are bad ones, and clearly the ones in Uvalde don't know how to do anything. So
cowards. That's
the
the
only
word that comes to mind for me. Yeah.
I mean, take out the, replace the P and put in the howards, and boom, that's what you got, buddy. Because that's all you guys were on that day, and I'm not editing that out because you guys suck.
I think we can all agree that they did a terrible job. Yes.
Yep.
There's a lot of anger, a lot of outrage that is justified over what they did in that shooting, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Gosch family and the Des Moines Police Department, they didn't get along. Noreen kind of was fronting this investigation. She hired her own private investigators. She hired her own team of people because she didn't feel like the police department was doing anything. So
explain
the case,
a little
though,
bit about that, about her little investigation, because she did put a lot of resources and throw a lot of resources at this.
Yeah, I think every dime they had went into investigating this case and searching for their son. But yeah, there just weren't many tips, there weren't any leads. But she did follow things, because like a few months after Johnny's disappearance, she said that somebody had said her son was spotted in Oklahoma, and a witness came forward, and police didn't substantiate these claims or anything. Nothing really further happened, but she was convinced that that was her son. So that was one sighting. But she had her own team investigating all of that.
Yeah, that's what you have to do, though. I guess if the other people aren't doing their job, then
yeah, I would do the same thing. But. And then, like I said, then 2 years later, Eugene Martin, that case happened. She was absolutely sure that these were connected. Police kind of said, we don't know. So, and that's still unsolved,
look similar
too.
Mm-hmm. And
they were the same age.
Did you also go down the rabbit hole, the Mark Allen rabbit hole? The 2 years after that? Because, we're talking about a pattern.
A little bit. I didn't a whole lot. I think it's in my notes somewhere here. I'm not at it yet. But go for that.
Yeah, March
86.
29th.
Tell me a little bit about that.
He basically was going to his friend's house and he just never got there. And
yes.
March 29th, 1986. And so, that's the one thing when you do hear other podcasts about this case, and they talk about all the different, I think on True Crime Garage, they talk about it for sure, about all the different missing kids in that area at that time, over those, I think it was like a 7 or 8 year period. It was abnormally high.
Now let's hear from this week's sponsor, BetterHelp. So I've been in therapy for, about 30 years, and I've been taking care of my brain for 30 years. And it's pretty much the way that you take care of your car, because if you don't take care of your car, it gets rust, it falls apart, needs to be repaired. Well, the same thing happens to your brain. So you can do all sorts of different things, like learning a new language or taking power naps to help your healthy brain. But then again, there's also BetterHelp online therapy. So, as I mentioned, I've been in therapy for 30 years. But again, I'm not your normal guy. So it is what it is. And I believe that everybody should experience some sort of therapy in their lives. One of the greatest things about BetterHelp is that it offers video, phone, and even live chat-only therapy sessions. So you don't even have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. Plus, it's much more affordable than in-person therapy. You can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. And the best part is, our listeners get 10% off the first month at betterhelp.com/who. That's better, HELP.com/who.
It was. Back to Mark Allen. Police, I did have this in my notes. Police said again, they were like, nope, none of these disappearances are connected in any way. None of them. But the private investigators that Noreen hired would say something completely different than that. We can go on to that. Should we fast forward to
the one thing that we should note before we start going into some of the other things is that they were I think Eugene Martin and Gosch were two of the Pats was the first milk carton kid, and then
I was just gonna say that. Yep.
And then these two were the next two. And of course, that was the milk carton campaign that actually did more harm than good. Great intentions.
Okay.
Great intentions.
Yeah, because
but they
were thinking. Yeah, Yeah.
America.
They were thinking that they were thinking it was going to be a good thing though, because everybody pretty much every week you buy milk at the grocery store, and they were like, what better way to bring awareness to missing and exploited children than to put their pictures on the milk carton? But as you say, it did more harm than good. Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, it just, it put the idea into children's heads that, one, kids were disappearing all over the place. Same with the parents.
Yeah.
And so it sort of led to, tightening of the reins and...
panic. Yeah.
Panic, you'd had the satanic panic in the 80s. You have stranger danger panic right now in the 80s. I mean, it's basically literally nothing but great intentions. Like they didn't do anything, but it was unfortunate because they didn't ever find anybody due to the milk carton kids, so it's like,
no,
it's sort of like the things you get in the mail. Have you seen me lately? Or have you seen me? And it's like, okay, but how many people look at this? And is this just a waste of money? Or, and they did do a lot of, they'd put a lot of kids out there, but again, having that they said, this is more of a psychological impact that I had read about. And that was that kids would sit there and they would look at these things and be all like,
yeah, am I going to be on there next? Yeah, scary. It was a scary time.
It's not quite as harmful as, say, the act that they passed after Jacob Wetterlin.
Okay.
Where you have now these kids are all, what was it? The sex offender list, I think. Yeah, the sex offender list. Yeah. So she's the one that, Patty Wetterlin was behind that after Jacob went missing in St. Paul, Minnesota, which was a week before Amy went missing in 1989. And then, she got the whole thing going with, she got the bill passed for the sex offender list. And now she says, at the in 2022, she's like, this was not the intention of this list, because I go to these places and there are kids there, they're teenagers, and they're in there for sending nude pictures to their girlfriends.
I know, that's a slippery slope.
And
that's
then
not
and you can think of like horrible or what, I don't even know if it was a Horrible Bosses, where he's on the list because he was peeing at a park in the middle of the night, and it's like, there are all these things that you don't really think about what the repercussions are going to be. I mean,
that's true.
It's how we ended up in the mortgage crisis, not to go completely off the rails, but in the 90s,
talk about rabbit holes.
they passed all these different, or, loosened all these different restrictions back in the 90s during Clinton's years. And then that opened the door to what created the housing market bubble.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ugh. I don't follow the news, so no, but I know about that. So
as a former news junkie, I'm still a news junkie, but as a former journalism
yes, all the news.
Working in the news, it's sorry, I can't help myself.
Oh, I know. I try. It's depressing. I try not to watch the news much, but so. Yeah, we are going off on a tangent now.
Yeah, but I think we should go back to Johnny Gosch right now.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the milk cartons. That was, I don't know, I think that was around 1984 when that started.
Yeah, so it started actually in Iowa. And then it was one of those things that a guy from Chicago who was running one of the biggest distribution facilities in the Midwest actually was like, hey, that's a really good idea. So he pitched it to his bosses, and they were like, sure, let's do it.
Yep, it started at Anderson Erickson Dairy in Iowa, which my uncle used to work there, and which is
world.
it's like a small, it started as a very small dairy, and it grew, and now it's throughout the Midwest, and it's great. They have the best dairy products, I will say, the best eggnog. But no, they were trying to help out a fellow Iowan by putting Johnny's pictures and stuff on, and Eugene's pictures on the milk cartons, and then it went national. But also, though, in 1984, the Johnny Gosch bill was signed into legislation, and so that I was talking about how this case would change the reporting
Absolutely.
and classification of these missing kids. Yeah. So this law required minors to, if when they were reported missing, law enforcement had to acknowledge that, they were not a runaway, they were a missing child, because they finally started to figure out that the first 24 hours are imperative to finding someone who's missing. So in this Johnny's case, it went 72, which was way too long. But so yeah, that bill was signed into legislation. So Noreen just kept on, and she was on a crusade to find Johnny, but also help other missing kids throughout the U.S. And fast forward a little bit to 1985, the case was pretty cold. Any lead she would get, she would have her investigators check into it. But something kind of big happened in 1985 when she received a letter from a man who was claiming that he had some info on Johnny Gosch's disappearance. He said he belonged to a motorcycle club that was running a large child slavery ring, and that they had Johnny. He demanded $100,000 from the Gosch family for the safe return of Johnny, and Noreen sent him some money, like $11,000, I think. And then the FBI stepped in finally at that point, and they claimed that this was all a hoax. But again, Noreen said, as with a lot of the other things, leads that she had followed, she believed that it could have been, it held some water. So she kind of believed this guy's story, and she thought the FBI ruined the chances of getting Johnny back because they stepped in. So it was almost like she kind of preferred to do the investigations on her own. And I don't know, she felt like there was something to this, but authorities said no, it was completely hoax. So yeah. And then yeah so and then but a couple things happened in 1985. Sorry, not to go off on a total tangent here, but there was a dollar bill that also surfaced with Johnny's name on it.
Yes.
It said "I'm alive," signed Johnny Gosch. So a woman in Iowa got this dollar bill as change at a grocery store, and she contacted Noreen Gosch and told her she found it. And there was a news conference and everything. They showed the dollar bill in question. And then again, police didn't really do a whole lot, or didn't really think that it was probably real. But the Gosches put up $400,000 as a reward around that time too, for anyone who would have credible information to bring Johnny home.
Where would they have gotten $400,000 for that reward?
I don't know. I mean, they were an upper middle class family living in Des Moines. I think they had good jobs. John did. I'm not sure exactly what Noreen did, but I know she was previously a widow. So, maybe there was some insurance money.
Sure.
So, she lost her first husband to a tornado in Iowa, tragically.
Wow, she had a rough ride.
She's been through a lot. Yeah, she has had a lot going
now,
on in
I know
her life,
I don't want to
a lot of sadness.
Because every time there's a case like this, anytime a child goes missing, you just have to ask the question: were the parents ever looked at? Obviously not Noreen, but John. I'm thinking.
I think they were. Now, I don't know a lot about that. I think they were cleared, obviously, but yeah, they were definitely looked at, because kids who go missing, it's very rarely complete stranger on stranger crime. It's usually someone in the family, something like that.
Yeah.
Typically that's what we see. And it was kind of odd that the routine changed. That's the one morning John Sr. didn't go out on the paper route with Johnny. So I think there were a lot of things worth looking into, but ultimately it seems as though they were cleared right off the bat pretty much. So
it's interesting though. Yeah. I mean, just because of the routine change, and
right.
And then you're basically, and this is not implying that there was any nefarious activity going on. It's just
right.
It's just the fact that there could have been a time where something could have occurred because of the fact that the time that he was last seen, the time that he was reported missing, and the fact that he delivered the papers. It just sort of, if I was a police officer, I would think that would be something that I would look into. Obviously, it wasn't him, or they were, they had some solid evidence that it was clearly not him. Again, you just have to ask a question. It's not trying to malign anybody. It's just more of just making sure that all the bases have been cleared. And especially with this police department, not necessarily doing the best job.
Right.
I mean, it's worth asking.
Right, definitely. I think it's always worth asking that question.
And did the marriage survive?
It did not. It did not.
Like most situations with...
Yep, the typical when you're going through this, a missing child, the death of a child, it can be a marriage destroyer. And it was mostly because John and Noreen weren't on the same page as far as what they thought happened to Johnny. I think John made it clear that he thought, Johnny was probably dead. He wanted to close the book on this after a few years, and he wanted to move on with his life. And if you know anything about this case and Noreen's fight, she never gave up. She made it. I mean, it was the rest of her life. This was it. And I mean, she's still living, but
right.
She never has stopped fighting. So I think there was a lot of tension, a lot of stress in their relationship, and a lot of sadness. So no, they didn't stay together, sadly.
Do you know how quickly the marriage, when they got divorced?
I don't know. It might be in my notes here.
It's just one of those things that sometimes, I guess when you have a parent who does really get involved in the investigation, the research, all that kind of stuff, and the other partner doesn't necessarily feel the same. I can totally understand that. And then if they feel like the resources aren't being spent properly, and that maybe she's going down rabbit holes that we'll go down here in a second. And it's like, I mean, how tough it is to have not only just to lose your child, but then to lose your whole, basically your existence, your marriage, and
everything. Yeah.
Was he an only child?
Would be. No, he was the youngest, so he was the only child of John and Noreen, but Noreen had children from her previous marriage. Okay. So, yeah. So they barely survived that tornado accident that their father died in. So they had other kids. So, and I believe John may have had older children, but don't quote me on that. I can't remember, but I think Johnny was the only, one that John and Noreen had together. He had half siblings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like I said before, then 1986 comes around. Mark Allen disappears. Police say they're not connected at all. 1988, then the Gosches received.
Comment on
that,
on the
absolutely.
Mark Allen thing?
Yes. Yeah.
In the Iowa cold cases, they're talking about, Mark Allen's mom's, is quoted as saying, "I don't necessarily believe, or I don't have proof that they're connected, but when I went and talked with the police, she said, quote, I felt like they were reluctant to pursue the case because of the other two missing boys, because they didn't want this to become a thing, where the national spotlight is, go to Des Moines, have your child abducted."
Yeah.
And that's kind of, it seems like another example of them just really not, like, they had changed all these procedures, but did anything change in this particular situation?
I could see that them, saying they're not related because of their own inability to solve these cases. A third child is going missing in a small window of time, same age group, same appearing to be like same MO. I mean, and they're not able to solve these cases. I could totally see them trying to take the cases out of the spotlight and trying to show, they're not connected at all. So
I mean, you have the Colonial Parkway
Yeah.
murders that were 4 murders, and
Yeah.
they think 3 of those are connected, but they were all 2 years apart. Why couldn't these people? Why can't the Des Moines police just take a look at it and go, are these really separate cases?
Right.
Because
Yeah, there's
What else
some
was
politics going
yeah,
on.
because I mean, there was some shady stuff going on in the area. If we want to go down that rabbit hole.
So not far from Des Moines, more like.
No, I was just saying.
Was it Omaha?
Yeah, it was.
or-
I mean, it was. It was about 3 or 4 hours. It's about 3 or 4 hours to Omaha from Des Moines.
It's even closer than that. I
Okay.
think it's like an hour and a half. So it's pretty close.
All right.
But
So
yeah.
what was that shady stuff going on there?
Well, okay.
This
We
is
do
all
want to.
speculation.
Yeah. Totally. Well, the Gosches received a letter in the mail, though. They did receive a letter. It said, I'll never be permitted to return home. They've cut my hair. They've dyed my hair. I look different. Don't ever forget me. Love your son, Johnny. And so when he's talking about he's alluding to a child sex trafficking ring that was apparently going on. And, soon after they received that letter, a man named Paul Benassi, he was an inmate in a Nebraska prison. He said he had info about the Johnny Gosch case. So what he said was that there was a huge child sex slavery ring that reached all across the U.S., but, it was kind of concentrated in Boys Town, which is, I believe that's Omaha, Nebraska.
Coincidentally, a
place.
creepy name.
Yeah. Boys Town, right? So this is way farther in my notes, but it does actually connect to Colorado too. There's like an Iowa-Colorado connection for you and me because Benassi gave some detailed information about this house in Monument, Colorado, where he said Johnny Gosch and a bunch of other boys were being kept in a basement cellar as sex slaves. So, yeah. Private investigators said that a client would put in a request basically for a type of child, and that these predators who worked in this sex ring would stalk victims and try to find someone close to this kid. They would take photos close to the description of what the client wanted, but they would take photos and then they'd receive payment and then they would kidnap the kids. So he was saying that that's what was going on with Johnny Gosch and Eugene Martin. So people were kidnapping these kids and selling them to pedophiles. So wow.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what was now? Didn't they find something interesting at this? Didn't they find this house in Monument?
They found the house, yeah. So Paul Benassi seems like, even though he had a lot of stuff going on, he was probably credible because he took them to this house. They went down, I think it was the Geraldo show. They did a special on it, and they went down into the basement.
Sounds
they had
very
video
Geraldo.
cameras.
At least they
It
found
does,
something
yeah.
this time.
Yeah, they did.
It's
They
not
found
Al
it,
Capone's
and they
fault.
found. No, I know. Yeah, exactly. But they found even initials carved into the ceiling of the basement, things like that.
Now, has Benassi told them that they were there?
He did. He said that they were there. Yeah, he said that,
and
that
then
he was there, and that he knew Johnny. He said that he had met Johnny. He actually said that he was the one who helped kidnap Johnny. It was something he had to do. He was forced to do it as part of this ring because he himself had been kidnapped when he was young. So,
And I think he said that it was because he had reached a certain age, and once you reach that certain age, now you become a recruiter or something along
that
those
sounds right.
lines. And
Yep.
again,
Yep.
there are disputes about this particular witness. His family disputes it,
Yeah.
and says that he was in Nebraska at the time of Johnny's disappearance, and so whatever. I mean, the fact that he was able to trace everything back to a house in Colorado that has a connection to this underground pedophile ring, and then have the fact that the initials were there, and then do the whole Geraldo Rivera expose on this type of thing.
I think it was Geraldo.
I could just fathom.
I'm pretty sure
I can just picture it. So
I
it
mean,
just sounds so right. So we're just gonna say it because
it sounds right. We'll just say that.
He wouldn't mind. He wouldn't mind.
He wouldn't mind.
No.
Totally.
He'd be down.
But it was a show like that.
Sure.
But the thing Paul Bonacci was saying does kind of sound right, because in another report that I read, there, like 3 days prior to Johnny's disappearance, there was this weird interaction at a high school football game that he and his family went to. So at the football game, Johnny, he's 12. He didn't want to sit with his parents. He kind of like was by the fence, talking to friends, stuff like that. And dad and mom were like, okay, come back and sit with us. They were keeping a close eye on him. And one of the times that they looked over, they noticed that there was a police officer talking to Johnny. So actually, and he was dressed as a police officer, I should say. We don't know that he actually was a police officer. So, but John Gosch then kind of was like, okay, come back with us. We don't know who this is or anything. And then, but later he was, back down talking to friends and stuff. And they found Johnny under the bleachers with this same police officer, which is weird. And the parents thought, well, that's not exactly appropriate, so we're going to take you back. And Johnny said after the game that the police officer was really nice and blah, blah, blah. But it's been, thought that maybe that wasn't a police officer. It could have been someone who was, working for this sex ring, trying to stalk Johnny, get information and stuff. So maybe he really wasn't a police officer. And then another Colorado connection, around the same time that the Paul Bonacci came out, and this dollar bill and everything, and the house and monument, there was somebody found in Denver in a bathroom at a restaurant in red fingernail polish. Someone had written, "I'm Johnny Gosch, I'm alive." It could have been a hoax, maybe not, but Denver, Colorado, I don't know that the Johnny Gosch case was really talked about a ton in Denver, and it was hundreds of miles away. So, you know what? Maybe it was real. So anyway, Noreen and her private investigators, they were adamant that Paul Bonacci was being truthful. She got to know Paul very well. And in 1992, there was an investigation conducted by America's Most Wanted. Oh, yeah, maybe it wasn't Geraldo. It might have been America's Most Wanted. That sounds right. But I swear that
Geraldo was probably
did
there.
something.
He was probably just hanging out there.
He was just like, surprise, I got here first.
I heard a rumor you were going to be here.
Yeah. But yeah, so it just, there were children's initials carved into the walls. It just, like, there were a lot of things that seemed like it could have been a credible story. So, and Noreen definitely believed that it was a credible story. And I got to also talk about this. I feel like I'm taking up so much time talking about this case, but there's so many crazy things. I want to say real quick, Noreen Gosch claimed that a few years later, Johnny actually showed up on her doorstep, knocked on the door, and he was an adult now, and he told his mom the same exact story that Paul Bonacci had told her, and that he stated he had been taken, he was sold into slavery, and that there were a lot of people, now that he was an adult, that wanted to kill him because he kind of aged out of that slavery thing because he was old, he wasn't a kid anymore. And he instructed her not to involve the police, that his life could be in danger. And John Sr. did not believe this story. He did not believe that Johnny ever showed up at the door. He didn't believe any of the stuff that Noreen believed, and he dismissed a lot of her ideas. So, he kind of classified her as like a delusional, grieving mother, and that was like the demise of their relationship. So yeah, but there are so many conspiracy theories we could talk about.
Well,
so
explain that whole thing with the fact that he shows up and he's with another man, and the other guy won't let him. He sort of is like kind of his, I guess, his babysitter, like, or handler.
Yeah,
better term.
Yep.
And of course, she she has gone on to say that she believes that this was him 100%. You know, who's to say?
I mean, stranger things have happened, so I don't know. I want to believe her. The other thing, you know, that could have been a cruel hoax. Let's say somebody really did show up at her doorstep claiming they were Johnny. It may not have been him.
Absolutely.
So, you know,
Total
who knows?
possibility there.
Yeah, I would like to think that it was him and that she, you know, got some closure or something. But yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean,
but
what were you gonna say?
Kind of like these conspiracy theories that have come about. So we talked about Omaha, Nebraska, and that this child sex trafficking ring was out of Omaha, Nebraska.
Allegedly.
That is true. Well, no, I mean, I think this is a pretty like accepted fact that Lawrence King, he was the general manager of the Franklin Federal Credit Union there. He was, you know, very involved in politics. He was the vice chairman of the National Black Republican Council. He sang the national anthem at the Republican National Convention. He was known for like throwing these extravagant parties, and it's pretty widely accepted as a fact that he, you know, was doing some shady shit. Like really bad stuff. And he did embezzle $40 million. But from the credit union he worked for. But there are a lot of adults that have come forward saying that as teenagers they had been forced into prostitution by him, that they were flown to like Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C. and other cities to participate in these orgies with pedophiles, mostly mostly politicians. So that's, I mean, kind of a conspiracy theory, but I think a lot of people say it's a fact that this happened. Kind of reminds me of Jeffrey Epstein. So, but this was happening in the heartland of America, Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha's very wealthy. I mean, let's not forget.
It is.
Oracle of Omaha is, you know.
Yep.
It's home base.
Yes. Is he still the richest man in America?
No. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world.
Yes.
And he's now dwarfed everybody. He's $200 billion richer. He's $100 billion richer than the next closest person.
Okay, so times have changed.
Yeah, Buffett's at like $100 billion.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take it still. Okay.
But yeah, Omaha does have a lot of nice. Yeah. It's a very, very upscale city.
Yeah, totally. But still, it's, you know, it is kind of the heartland of America.
It's the middle of the Midwest. Of course it is.
It's the middle of the Midwest. So, but what they said was that, you know, some of the wealthiest, most influential figures in Nebraska, prominent men in politics, media, even police officers, people in local government, things like that, would participate in Lawrence King's, you know, sex trafficking, sex parties, things like that, which reminds me of John Wayne Gacy, how he would have these crazy parties and stuff, and
get the kids drunk and do some magic tricks.
Yeah. But so these kids were in the foster system, and there were actual social workers who reported these victim stories. They forwarded the stories to the authorities, but the authorities just ignored a lot of this. So Boys Town, like I said, it was a nationally known orphanage, basically. They had numerous connections to the Franklin Credit Union where Lawrence King worked. And there were a lot of commercial accounts that were sending minors to work under King. So it was just very, very like disturbingly interconnected. So, and we could go down rabbit holes, and I'm kind of starting to. There's one more thing I want to say because I find it really interesting. Yeah. The Senate committee hired a private investigator to work on this case and investigate the child sex trafficking ring, all the stuff that Lawrence King was involved in. He was a former state trooper. His name was Gary Caradori. He drew up a list of 60 potential victims, and he started conducting these videotaped interviews about, victims who were saying this child sex trafficking ring was real and I was part of it. He had in his possession photographs that were taken at these sex parties, and in 1990 he was on a small plane on a trip with his 8-year-old son, and suddenly out of the blue, the plane it just disintegrated. It blew up midair over Illinois, and his son and him were killed. And the briefcase that contained all of this incriminating evidence about this child sex trafficking ring was gone and never found. So that just gave me goosebumps. So, it's crazy. I mean, it's just so crazy. So the Johnny Gosch case, yes, it's one child who went missing, but I feel like it has deeper roots and fingers that stretch all over the United States. I really kind of do believe some of the crazy conspiracy theories that go along with this case. I hope that doesn't make me seem like I need a tinfoil hat or something, but it's so interesting, and a lot of them are very credible,
Yeah, I just would, I would say that, the grand juries have investigated some of that stuff about, the Franklin Credit Union, and they have not indicted anybody, and there haven't been any, confirmations on that, existing, but
because they got paid off.
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of different ways that this stuff gets pushed.
You never know.
Pushed under the rug. I mean, that's just the way things go. I mean, let's not forget about, my favorite thing to talk about is, how great the church has been for, just
the Catholic Church
keeping pedophiles.
Don't even get me started
in business. I mean, they just gave them.
That's what I'm writing my book about is the crimes, conspiracies, and cover-ups of the Catholic Church.
You're not going to have any shortage of material for that, because ever since the existence of religion, there has been corruption and all sorts of pedophilia. So,
yep, I'm fascinated by that. So that's kind of like anyone who listens to my podcast. I've taken a few steps back from my podcast just because I am writing the book about this subject, and I'm interviewing a lot of people and stuff right now. But I do love a good conspiracy theory.
I mean, who doesn't love a good conspiracy theory? And seriously, this case is ripe for a lot of them. And Noreen has been, very vocal. And anytime that something does come up, or had come up in the past, she would always be, bringing it to the news, bringing it to the attention of the newspapers, and keeping that story in the forefront. And that's exactly what she should be doing. As for in regards to like what we were just talking about, it's like, I don't even want to go there. I'm not going to go down that path. Never mind.
You don't want to go down there?
Well, I just didn't want to insult anybody, so I'm not going to do that, and I won't.
Okay. So was it to do with conspiracy theories?
No, it just has to do with.
Okay.
No, but it's all good, and so. But like with the Allen case, the Martin case, the Gosch case.
Yes.
Variety of other missing children in the area, and then the police so quick to eliminate any possibility of a connection, I think is just sort of not necessarily the best practice of a police officer or a detective.
Agree.
I think you should look at all angles. I mean, I do feel like it's something that should continue to be pursued. I know that we talk about this every week, cold cases are cold cases, and that other cases take precedence and blah, 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 blah. But when you have a case like this, that it goes so far, it goes so deep into the community, and it affects so many people. And again, this was a national story because of the fact that he was on the milk cartons, and then it was the stranger abduction. And this was a national tragedy, not only for Noreen and everything else, but just for the whole idea of child's innocence being lost. The kid was carrying newspapers on a paper route
walking with his little
dog in his red wagon, and it
doesn't get any more all-American than that.
It's so sad to just imagine what happened, and they still write about stuff you still see articles. I mean, even if you just type in Johnny's name, it's like Slate just did an article like a year ago about Eugene Martin and the connection between him and Johnny Gosch. And it's like, okay, well, we're connecting the dots now. It's like, are we going to go back and connect the dots then? I mean, I know most people probably aren't alive at this point, or...
Yeah, I'm sure that, anyone who was investigating that case in 1982, gosh, that was a long time ago. So they're up there in years now, definitely retired. But yeah, I know it was a loss of innocence for the entire country. And this missing boy, it changed the way my parents parented my brother and I, living in Iowa, living in Des Moines. It changed everything. And I think still to this day, when you watch a true crime show or something, this is like there's like an homage paid to the Johnny Gosch case in a lot of scenes. Like you still see the paper boy who just goes missing and never is seen again, and the milk cartons and stuff like that. I think this case changed everything in the U.S., really.
Yeah, and that's what I mean when I say it's like, okay, we have 250,000 unsolved cases, and so I know you can't focus on all of those cases, but there are certain cases that do are more impactful, and if they are solved, maybe some people can either get some sense of closure, or maybe we can figure out what was really going on. I don't know, because I know that there was a lot of people going missing in Iowa at that time, and then to say that there wasn't a child sex ring, I get it. You don't want to even explore that idea, but sometimes the truth hurts, and
I definitely think there was a child sex trafficking ring going on. I definitely think, this is just my opinion, I think Johnny Gosch was a victim of that. I know the name of your show is Who Killed. I don't think Johnny Gosch is probably living today, but I don't think he was killed at that time. I think, honestly, I believe a lot of what Noreen said. I think he was held captive, but I think he was kept alive for a lot of years in a really sad environment. That's what I think. I know it sounds kind of like a conspiracy, and kind of there's a lot of cover-up involved, but like you said, think about the Catholic Church. How many conspiracies are there with that? The Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking ring, all the people who were involved and kept, things hidden, and the Penn State University, Jerry Sandusky cover-up, just so many cover-ups. Cover-up is a way of life, I feel like, in America. So it really wouldn't surprise me if the crazy story about his disappearance is true.
Yeah, it is tragic to think that if that is the case, that is one really, really incredibly sad way to live your life, and be forced into that type of situation. It can't.
Just a hellish experience.
No.
Yep, I know. So, I mean, for his sake, I hope that that's not the case, but the story has legs for sure. I will say that.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that we notice as far as true crime, people or professionals, whatever you want to call us, I don't know, podcasters or whatever. It's more like you start to look at all these cases, and I don't know if it's other people if it's just because of our backgrounds that we look at the conspiracies and we see them more as a practicality because it's been so long. I mean, I know that it's very easy to kind of say, okay, I don't know. I'm just trying to. It would be much easier if it was the parents, not Noreen, but right. But if he was, if he was,
that's the story we hear.
I can't think about it. Yep. So sick. It's just sickening.
I know. But we hear about that a lot. It's the parents. We rarely hear about, oh, it was this whole underground thing and there's these people snatching up random kids. I almost think it's sadly easier to digest the story of must have been his dad than it is to want to face the reality that there's this group of horrible monsters out there taking people's kids and selling them into slavery. That's a crazy thing to think could be really happening in America.
Yeah, I definitely.
But it is.
It certainly is. Sex trafficking is a definite thing. And you would look also at the area, too. I mean, driving through Des Moines, that's interstates. And guess it's really easy to get on that interstate and get to Omaha if that's where you're going.
Exactly. Yep. It's a quick route.
There's nothing out there between,
right.
As far as populations go, not going to be a lot of cops.
Yep.
Not going to be a lot of, once you get past Des Moines, what are the other major cities between Des Moines and Council Bluffs?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Not nothing.
I don't know.
Not major. Not
many.
major.
There's not
as big as Des Moines.
Yeah, Des Moines is the biggest city in Iowa. Second to Cedar Rapids is second to that. Other than that, it's pretty small towns.
Yeah, and then Omaha is the largest city in Nebraska, and
yep.
Again, you have power, wealth, and all that stuff coming together, and it's. There's definitely something there, and I don't always buy into the conspiracy theories because I just, it's just hard to sometimes do that.
Yeah, I know it is.
But it's like at this point in time, it's okay to look at it and at least examine it.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, do you have any other thoughts on Johnny and these other cases?
Well, no, I like I said, I love a good conspiracy theory. It's not a good one, it's horrible, but I'm very interested in conspiracy theories and the little bit of truth that's behind them. I do think, that's what I think happened to him.
One of the things that they also talked about in that conspiracy and that sex ring is brandings.
The brandings, yes, and Paul Bonacci was able to show
his brand.
Law enforcement his brand, and they confirmed there were other people who had that same brand. So
you can look it up.
What's that? Yeah, that's a real thing. You can.
That's like Nexium.
There are
that's like
lots
Nexium
of people.
Stuff.
Yes, lots of people were branded with the same brand, and they had the same story. So
Nexium. I don't think that was right. Is it Nexium?
I think that's. Yeah, I think it was. Yep.
I was gonna say. I think that might be a prescription drug. I don't know.
No, I think. Now that you say that.
I think we'll just say Keith Raniere. He's the one that branded them. So.
Gotcha. But nobody. The case is still, I think, seen as a cold case. Nobody was arrested. There are no real people of interest, and no arrests have ever been made, and all we have are these stories, so nobody knows. It's still a mystery, sadly. Noreen Gosch feels that she knows what happened to her son, but it's a mystery.
Yeah, the authorities just don't believe it, and unfortunately, they just kind of have that sort of adversary relationship at this point. But if anybody does have any information about any of these cases, the FBI office in Des Moines is 515-223-4278. I'd give you the West.
Thank you for giving that. And if anybody's listening and they know a lot about this case, and if I mixed up any of the details, I apologize. It's been a long time since I covered this case. It's been months, so I'm going mostly by my memory. So
we've all been there.
Wrong.
This is this happens in this business, and not ever going to get everything right.
Yeah, it did happen in my home state, so I grew up, hearing about it.
Yeah, so. I can't even imagine. I can imagine because I grew up with the Amy Mahalovic case. You grew up with the Johnny Gosch case. It's just tragic. So
It is. It's all tragic. It's our job. Our job is we cover this stuff. It's depressing.
It's very depressing.
You know? So you got to go skiing.
That's right. Absolutely.
To get a breath of fresh air.
Exactly. Exactly. Or go walk in a cornfield if that's what you're into.
Oh God, no! I would never do that. You would be covered in mosquito bites and like you'd have like a rash. I used to detassel corn when I was 14, so
Fun.
Kind of a farm.
Farm
yeah,
girl.
not fun. A little bit. Yep.
All right. Well, on that note, get to your farming and no, I'm just
okay.
kidding. Get
I
to
will.
your writing your book.
I'm not.
And
no,
again,
I don't have chickens anymore.
And again, if you want to
yes,
check out
my
her
book,
podcast,
it comes out November.
Ooh, got a deadline. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Coming out in November,
Yep.
wherever books are sold.
Yep.
Awesome. And then
Yes.
you can get her podcast, True Crime IRL, anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. So, Kelli, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. It's been my pleasure, Bill. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And you have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you so much to Kelli Brink for taking time out of her busy schedule to join us on this week's episode of Who Killed. As you know, I drop new episodes every Friday, as well as you can follow me on Twitter at BillHuffman3. And if you want to donate to the show, you can always do so via Venmo with my username at Bill-Huffman-3. In regards to the Johnny Gosch case, if you guys have any information, we provided the number to contact the FBI office in Des Moines. You can also contact the FBI via 1-800-CALL-FBI. So again, thanks so much for tuning in this week, and thank you to Kelli for coming on the show. And once again, I hope you guys have a great week. Stay healthy, and as always, be safe.
24 hours ago, I found out the person that I'd been dating and seeing for the last 6 months is a con man.
That is my sister Emma. Andrew Tonks's lies had been so convincing, she'd invested $300,000 with him. However, the tables were about to turn on Andrew. What he didn't know was that Emma had discovered his real identity. But to get any chance of justice, Emma had to act like it was business as usual. Coming up in this series,
And that's when murder, all this stuff goes through my mind. I'm really, really scared.
I'm assuming Sarah has watched too much Netflix and figures I've been defrauding you. Couldn't be further from the truth.
That's what this was, a real-life story that seems so unbelievable, but it was actually true.
a true story that all starts with one simple swipe to the right. I'm Sarah Ferris.
And I'm Emma Ferris, and this is my story, Conning the Con.
How far would you go in your pursuit of the American dream? Would you put in the work?
911, what's your emergency?
Would you take a big risk?
What's the problem? What's the problem?
Would you cheat? Would you lie?
Were they shot? Were they shot?
Would you kill?
My mom is dead. My mom is right there.
I'm Jeremy Schwartz, and I'll be taking you inside the minds of some of our most notorious felons and outlaws, exploring the dark side to the American dream. You'll meet the picture-perfect brothers who teamed up to kill their parents, the thief who stole babies and ruined countless lives, the crypto king who siphoned off billions in the name of saving the world, and plenty more. From assassins to gangsters to killers and con artists, whatever the case, whoever the criminal, you don't know the full story until now. Go to AmericanCriminal.com or search for and follow American Criminal wherever you get your podcasts.